the idea that every single human can change a feeling, a belief, an interaction, the way they interact with people, with the world, with this earth, with their marriages, the way that they look and sound and feel for their children. Little things like that are life changers, and they leave a different kind of legacy. I mean, one of my favorite things from clients, and I work with a lot of clients, and they're working on stuff with their relationships or their life or their career or their whatever. But one of my favorite things is, well, there's two things. One is when someone finally finds their worth, and it's not tied to anything that they do. That's one of my favorite things. My second favorite thing is when they come back after a session or two or three or whatever, and they tell me stories about how they're interacting with their children in a completely different way. That is, I believe, those things is why I keep going.
Welcome back to the Mind Change Podcast. I'm Heather McKean, and today my co-host is back again, Kent McKean, my husband, for part 2 of our conversation.
All right, part 2.
Part 2.
Here we go.
If you're coming on this and didn't listen to part 1, you must go listen to part 1 for context. This is not going to make sense otherwise. Okay, so we left off talking about you being in shutdown.
Freeze mode,
Yes.
sort of a whole year of just who am I? Like, you're getting well. You're not only physically better, but emotionally, mentally, everything is changing. Your relationships are changing. The way you speak, there's like this joy about you. Oh, for those of you who don't know, I used to consider myself the optimist, and my wife I would consider the pessimist. Now, she would call it a realist. I'm not a pessimist, I'm just a realist. But it was that balance that
It was really pessimistic for me.
But she wasn't that anymore. That was the whole thing, is she was becoming the optimist. And then here's the crazy thing. Me being the optimist and being like, she'd be, in one sense, a negative Nancy about it. And I'd be like, no, but look at this and look on the bright side. And now all of a sudden she was the one always seeing the cup half full, always seeing the possibilities of life. And of course, then I come in and counteract it. And now I'm the pessimist. Now I'm the one who's, anyways, very interesting.
It was quite a flop.
Got to keep that balance.
Oh, man. And I had a lot of tools at the time and was really getting, deeper into that next part of my journey. The stuff I didn't realize was, I kept thinking just get well, like physically
Right.
well. And really the deeper call was the emotional wellness and the spiritual wellness and like those abilities to go deeper. And so I had some tools, but I did not have the tools or the awareness at the time to have any idea what was going on with you. It was so confusing. I just couldn't make it make sense in my mind.
I'm such a puzzle.
It makes complete sense now, but it did not make sense then.
Yeah.
So what a conundrum for me. I feel like my whole life has been given back to me. Not given back, new.
Yeah. It's you have a new life.
I have a new, like,
You're like born into some new self. Your body is new.
everything
Your heart
felt
is new,
new.
your
The way I
mind
saw
is
my
new.
past was new. The way I saw my future was new. It was so different. And yet my marriage was
The same.
not even the same, because it just didn't work anymore.
Yeah.
It felt like this huge block.
Well, we had built our marriage and our life and job and everything based off of the way that our programs worked.
Yeah,
You being
maladaptive
sick.
qualities.
Yes, that's a great word for it. So now we have this new, and of course for me that's a conundrum because I'm like, but I have to, the way that I've been living is perfect, right? Like this is just the way. And now you're changing. See, you were pessimistic, but now you're too optimistic. Now gotta keep that balance. And so no, I mean it was a
linear,
shocker.
so black and white and right and wrong.
Yes.
That thinking. We didn't even know it at the time. Okay, so then what was it? So we wallowed around in that for quite a while, and it was not easy. And in the meantime, we moved continents.
Yeah, that's true. You were well, we were able to travel and go abroad like we had wanted to for
we moved
a long
overseas.
time.
We moved to Africa.
We did.
Of all places. But see, you can run from yourself, but you cannot hide. Wherever you go, there you are.
Yeah.
We thought we were stepping into this whole new life.
Well, that was a really, I mean, not just the beginning, that was a continuation, but the beginning of a new chapter of me kind of continuing to move and do different things to find myself and to find my worth and, kind of feeling stuck in a certain place or just feeling like not content as much. And then trying something new to feel like get that passion back, get that whatever back. But again, that same program, that same worthlessness or not good enough or whatever was there was still there.
Right. And we're making do with where it feels like our marriage is at and that lack of depth and intimacy at the time.
So you recognized, so I did not.
Right.
I was like, no, things are great. We got some issues and some problems. But again, it's not that I even was trying to block the depth or the intimacy. Mm-hmm. I really think that where I was at on a subconscious level, I wasn't capable of accessing that kind of intimacy because first of all, I didn't know how. I don't think it was modeled in that way, or at least I didn't perceive it. I didn't take it in. Wherever it was modeled, I didn't pull that in for very good reasons, I'm sure. But yeah, I didn't know how to get to that level with you at all. I didn't know there was a level. I thought it was just like, we're married, this is great.
It's like one of those little secret levels in Super Mario Brothers or something.
Okay, so there's a line from Friends where he's like, Joey's talking about something. He's like, it's like all my other senses are opening up. It's like there's another level. And Ross says, I didn't have it. No, you had another level.
Anyway, random Friends quotes will be abundant probably. Okay, so then fast forward. How did you even first get the inkling or think like, maybe I should think about doing some of the stuff that Heather's doing? Okay,
great question. So remember that last time I talked about threat, right? Mm-hmm. This whole idea of you getting well, you really leveling up, which again meant that I'm lower. It was this whole higher, lower, who's whatever on a different level or plane. And so there was threat there for sure. But the truth is, just like your wildness that drew me to you when we first met, although I was excited and that drew me to you, it also then very soon became a threat, right? It was that, so there's this outward threat that I felt with you getting well, but deep down, there was this like inspiration and this excitement. And this excitement of like, oh my goodness, if she can change all of this, then maybe I can too. So that was definitely there. It was not at the forefront of me like, yeah, let me imitate or let me, all this. It was definitely there somewhere. But I would say the big thing for me that got me to push forward and say, okay, it's time for me to go deeper here. It's time for me to figure out what's stopping me, what my blocks are, what's going on, what's creating the misdynamics in our marriage or parenting or whatever. I think it really came because, like I said, we moved around, we did a lot of different things, changing parts of jobs or what we're doing, and I just started to feel blocked on all sides. Like life was getting smaller and smaller, and I was feeling more and more caved in. And so that's why we moved, and that's why we tried different things. But everywhere I went, it was like I just kept hitting a wall. Of course, I was hitting a wall in work, kind of just not feeling satisfaction anymore, not feeling like, I don't know, purposeful, or I don't know. It wasn't there anymore. And even though we had changed kind of what we had done a little bit here and there, it was still just not fulfilling. So then I turned, okay, well, what about our parenting? And feeling at that point, like noticing that the kids are starting to feel a little stuck in some ways, and the kids are, and realizing some of the ways I'm boxing them in, controlling, things like that. And then of course the marriage. And that was the biggest one, I think, for me, and realizing, okay, something's got to get done. And you remember on the last episode, I talked about how at the beginning of our relationship, I had said, I'd heard you say, I can't do this anymore. And of course, you weren't talking about the marriage, you were talking about the behavior. Well, I think it became a little bit more about, okay, this dynamic. It wasn't just the behavior anymore, it was the dynamic. It kind of upgraded to, I can't do this dynamic anymore. And just feeling that something's got to be done. Partially, there may have been some inner threat on my side, not from you, but me feeling like, uh-oh, what am I going to lose if I don't change? But then there was this other side of me that just felt tired and blocked. Something had to give.
So by this time, if we sort of fast forward, we lived in Africa, and then we moved to Hawaii. We moved to Maui.
Mm-hmm.
And in Maui is when I really started my business.
Right.
That's when I started the Mind Change Method, and I started working on writing the book,
mm-hmm.
and, really doing all of that. And you were still a bit fringy with it. I think at first...
Was I?
You were really resistant. Like, I don't know what that is you're doing. It's a little hokey pokey.
Well, I'll say the biggest thing for me, the absolute biggest resistance I had was, but what do you mean, like changing memories or changing how you your beliefs or changing how things went or trauma or whatever? To me, it was... I said it to you from the beginning. I was like, but aren't you lying to yourself?
Yeah.
Because for me, truth was truth. That whole black and white thing of like, truth is truth. This happened. This was the outcome. This is what was said. And I just didn't have the study, the know-how, or the research of how memory actually isn't real. Memory is very subjective. Memory changes. Memory is malleable. And that is...
Even though I had the research.
Right. But for me,
right.
I knew my truth, and you need to stop stepping on it.
Yes,
that was one of the biggest resistance factors for me. And even for me, I was like, you know what? You want to change some of the ways you view your family and some of your past things. All right, if it's making you feel better, that's fine. But not for me. I know what my family, I know what happened in my life, and I know that everything was perfect, whatever.
Right. Okay. Do you think that there was any underlying trigger maybe, because of, we talk a lot about changing. I mean, it's in the title, mind change.
Sure.
And for you, there was this push-pull underneath thing where people were trying to put you in a box, or you felt like for a long time, like I remember you talking about when you were younger, feeling like maybe you didn't fully fit in, or maybe you were a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
And, you were kind of forced to get in line, change, if you will, to fit in to everybody else. And that was hard, and there was a lot of resistance. I remember you talking about when you were young. So do you think that you were reacting even subconsciously to that at all, of like, stop trying to change me, even though I really need to be changed, or I want to change this? I
definitely think that came into play. Again, that whole idea of, if there's something in me that needs to change, then I internalized that as, that means there's something wrong with me. Mm-hmm. And if there's something wrong with me, then I'm going to use this general term because this is what was in my head, is that means there's something bad about me. Mm-hmm. And bad is bad.
That is not good.
That is not good.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah.
Never not be bad,
Right. So, okay. What do you feel like was the thing, or many things? What was the first little niggle of like, I want to do this. Because here's the thing, this is like my entire business now. And this is what I'm doing. This is my primary focus. And you are still not bought in.
Right. This is,
and I'm not like
ago,
bugging you about it or trying to push it down your throat. Right? Would you agree to that?
No, when we were in Maui, no.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I was like, okay, you do you and I'll.
Yeah, and I had, again, it was that whole thing of we had just moved. I was starting a different job. It was like, all right, I got my thing. Yeah. It was like, oh, this is a different place, different thing. You do yours, I'll do mine. It's great.
Yeah. Okay, so what was it? Like, you've talked about a little, you started to feel boxed in. You started to recognize some stuff about yourself. And then what? Like, what do you feel like was the big moment?
Goodness. Again, I don't know if there was... Well, I guess there was a big moment, but I think for me, these moments we're talking about of like, oh, these shifts, for me, it was definitely, and it always has been, a continual unlayering. Mm-hmm. So it's an unlayering of another thing that I've seen, another thing I realized, another thing that's coming to surface, another. And I think that kind of ended up, popping the bubble in one sense, pushing it to the edge. And I do think the work that I had done, because it's not like I hadn't done any of this work from the time that you started your journey, for two reasons. But from the time you started your journey all the way through, until we moved to Maui, I had definitely done some work. Mm-hmm. It was minimal. But
you wanted me to work with you.
Yeah, which you quickly stopped. You started declining big time. No, there's two reasons for that. One is because I was that wall. I was a steel wall that I was just so difficult as a client, you want to call it? Mm-hmm. I was so difficult because I think I just had my belief systems and I was like, no, I want this to change, but not this, it's like all tied together.
Well, and the threat of that role reversal between us, and then for me to be now the helper, for me to be the one helping you change.
Well, and let's get real. Where did most of my stuckness and most of my issues, they were tied somewhere with you in the middle of it.
Totally.
So here we are, you're trying to help me.
And I'm the issue.
Right. Like trying to okay, let me just really be open and vulnerable and real and raw, which I didn't know how to do anyways, right?
Right, especially in front of me.
Right.
Yes.
So, and you're the person who means the most to me, the person who I want to not only, I don't know, but I want to show off to the most, the one I want to know that I'm the most valuable to them, kind of a thing is where I was at. And so to be that raw and that real, I just couldn't do it. So we had done some work together. I'd gotten in with a number of other people that did mind body type things. I was just trying to explore once you closed the door. I was just trying to explore, okay, where can I go? What can I do? But I really do believe that some of that work, even that preliminary work that may have seemed like I was just hitting walls still, there was something shifting. And that's the amazing thing about the brain, right? Is that even though there's times, even in this work, we're working with clients, or even though there's times where people are having a hard time overcoming or shifting a certain aspect of something we're working on, the work is still working. Like It's still doing deep work.
Because we deal with the subconscious mind.
Exactly. And so even though we may be having a symptom or an issue up here, we're unraveling things down here that even though it's like nothing's moving, all of a sudden, wait, what happened, right? And it's that deep work. So I think that the work over the years, and not just sitting down and doing the work, but like our conversations and the way that you conversationally use mind change and all these other things, I think really did help me to do that unraveling underneath. And then there was a moment, and this is the pivotal moment for me. I think it was this idea of I can do whatever I want, and that's okay. And I think I used to fit myself into this kind of career, this kind of path, this kind of life, this kind of marriage, this kind of whatever. And all of a sudden, and it wasn't at full volume by any means, but it was like that switch had finally flipped where it's like, who cares what anybody else thinks? I recognize that I want to try something and I want to do something that, especially back then, was very edgy, right? Now there's a lot of things in the recent years about the mind-body connection, about neuroscience and all of these other things. But back then it was still very, very edgy, especially around my circle of people. And so, yeah, that was the pivotal moment is
And
I
we
can do
talk
whatever I want.
a lot about trauma.
Right.
And that hadn't resonated with you really.
No,
Like,
life was perfect. I didn't have any trauma. What are you talking about?
right. It wasn't until we started, like, let's talk about what trauma really is.
Right. Trauma is not this terrible, horrible thing that necessarily happened to you, although it can be.
Right. It's
Right?
anything that overwhelms the body's ability to cope. And when we started to get down into, wait, what does that mean? And hey, maybe your body was reacting to things and that qualifies. That's, I think, where you started to open up a little bit and started to just be like, even using that same framework of, okay, people might think some way about this, but what do I think about me? Like, like starting to look back at yourself with a little more compassion and a little more curiosity.
Right.
And that I saw started opening some doors for you and unlocked some things that maybe could have been considered big T traumatic things that you didn't have an awareness of. Right.
Absolutely.
Which people are always afraid of that's going to happen.
But you can bury it. And when you have something buried, big T or little t trauma, when it's there and it's buried, there will be a coping skill, period. Even if that coping skill is forgetting, even if that coping skill is everything's fine, even if that coping skill is whatever, it doesn't, even if it's minor, it will come out. And for me, it came out relationally, clearly. It came out mentally. It started to come out physically eventually, right?
Yeah. And not everybody has some buried, unremembered thing. That's not what we're saying.
And it wasn't like that. It wasn't like, oh, and then this one big thing. It was just things that I had buried.
Yeah, for sure. Which a lot of people do. And it was that horrifying and scary and hard to work through?
It was, I think for me, it was actually enlightening and it was freeing. Now, a lot of people would discover something from their past or even start to have a different perception of their past or take the veil off and realize things weren't perfect and all of it and get like, ah. But for me, because that veil had been there for so long of, this idea of, this ideal, whatever you want to call it, taking it off was actually like taking off this like weight and this cloak and this weighted blanket that had been on me for so long. And I actually started, and not everything was better, right? But at least it freed it, right?
Yeah.
And so that was super helpful.
And then not only did you start doing the work, you like dove in.
Oh yeah.
Like, okay. So what do you think that switch was? Because you had watched me, you had watched actually by that time quite countless other clients and friends and people get changes with the work. And then you just dove in.
I think a few things. First of all, I have always been curious about people. That's what I did in college, human development, like that. There's been a curiosity. Now, I know the deeper reason is because I've been curious about me and all of that. But there was that there. So when I was able to start moving forward with this plan of, hey, what are we going to do? Like, what am I going to do? How am I going to explore this? I went straight into it hard. I get that way sometimes anyways, when I'm excited about something. But here's the thing that really excited me, I think the most, is there was that thing of, man, I'm taking off this blanket, like I said, and how deep can I go? Like I started to discover that anything might be possible. And I started to discover that I'm really good at understanding this stuff and started to finally, from being super hard to change anything, starting to recognize, oh my goodness, I can change anything quickly, easily. I just had to understand it. And of course, then believe in it.
Do you think also because my entry point into this work was such extreme physical illness And in the beginning, I think physical illness was not your issue.
Right.
Right. Do you think that at all stopped you in the beginning of being like, oh yeah, well, she has that, and not realizing the depth in which this work can work?
Definitely. I mean, I don't think I recognized the emotional and relational freedom that could come because I don't think I had recognized that fully in you, because our relationship still had issues, but I realized there's two of us. So I think that's part of it. But I also think that, well, I mean, I started recognizing some more physical stuff in little physical things. So it's almost like when I took that blanket off and started to see the freedom and feel the freedom, it was like I finally was able to, my body was starting to speak up as well. And I was actually able to listen. Whereas before I wasn't listening in any area of my life that there were issues.
Right. And so many people don't listen to the body because it's really, we've been trained to disconnect.
Oh, I was very disconnected from my heart, it was everything for me is up here. Very analytical, not in the engineer way, but like self-analytical, super conscious all the time, using that prefrontal cortex, like, and what about this? And if someone asks me a question, I will, like, in a nanosecond have like 7 to 10 different responses and respond with the one that's going to be the best for that person. Like, very, very automatic for me.
Right.
And then when someone's talking, in my head, like, what's the best, what's the next thing I should say, or all of these things. And so not learning how to be present, how to be in my heart, in my body, super disconnected.
So it's such a great point, because everyone will enter into this at some stage of that ability to connect, right? And it may look different for different people because of that. For you, you were so shut down that, yeah, you were just completely stuck in a very high, like beta phase of your mind, which is that just highly, highly conscious and hypervigilant state. And then there's not the opportunity to get in touch with your gut, which is where your intuition lies. It's where the knowledge that we are inherently wise and good and can do things on our own and have sovereignty and ability within us already. That was squashed early.
Oh, I was very much a second guesser of myself all the time. I mean, I didn't know what it really meant to trust myself. I think because I had learned, for whatever reasons, I had learned that it's not okay to trust yourself. You need to always make sure other people give you that approval, right? Or even just that I'm not trustworthy. Now, that was never said to me, and I don't believe that anyone in my life felt that way about me now. Like, I don't think that's the case. But I perceived it as a kid and as a teenager that, well, if I can't make my own decisions because otherwise they're bad decisions and I need to just do what people tell me, I must inherently not be trustworthy.
That by nature,
Sure,
you are going to make bad choices.
I'm going to make bad choices. I'm going to mess up. And so I need to stay within a framework, right? Which is that whole ideal and certain life and all of that.
Yeah, and that does systematically shut us off we have to shut off our intuition, disconnect from our gut. If you're talking about on a physiological level, that the polyvagal theory, we have to shut the gut down.
Well, I'll shut the gut down. I think I was shutting the heart down.
Yeah, that's the next step.
And of course,
was why you couldn't do emotions.
Down, shutting down the sexual arena in a lot of ways. Like, there was just so much stuff. I was so shut down.
Yeah, and stuck in this tiny little corner of your noggin. All right. So then you did start to open up, and you started to do the deeper work and get the changes and realize you could change like everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how was that for you in the beginning?
Oh, it was amazing. I mean, at first it's starting out with the little victories, right? And that's so important. That's what we tell people, like, hey, we're going to start with something little, or we want you to start with something little so that you can, start to get that training your brain, right? And
so that you can see your mind can change.
Yeah.
How many of us are grown adults and don't really realize our mind can change? Not like, oh, I wanted this for dinner, now I want this, but like things that we thought were foundational and belief systems that are deeply rooted, and memories and traumas that we've held on to for decades can change as if they were never that way before.
And as if something completely different, beneficial
was there instead.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nuts.
So, yeah.
It's commonplace for us now,
Sure.
but if you remember back to those first couple of things that changed when you're like, what? No way, right? And you keep trying to go back and access the old way, and you're like, it's not really there.
Listen, I remember and this was way before I finally decided, but I remember that one of the very first things, and you were working on me, I remember it was just about this guy, and it was what I would now call anxiety and, actually it was just fear and anxiety. When we were working on it, 10 years ago or whatever, I would have called it frustration, because it wasn't okay to be worried, or, but I would have called it frustration and, just the things that person's doing or being or whatever. And we worked on some stuff about a conversation I was going to have. And it was like, I didn't feel afraid anymore. I was like, in fact, I felt compassion for this person. That's what shifted from frustration to compassion. And that was a pivotal moment that stuck in my head, even though I didn't do anything for quite a while with it. But that continued on as my personal journey of growth and change. And of course, mind change really came into being is, oh my goodness, like these things that I used to hold on to or thought were just frustrating or whatever, let them go, whatever. But no, they can be completely eradicated and my relationships change.
And now you are my business partner and a fundamental part of how we're building this thing and how it's grown and changed and how we're training others to do this work. And, just hundreds of people have been like radically changed working with you.
Yeah.
What's that like?
Well, I think at the beginning it felt empowering. Like, oh my goodness, like again, it was tied. There was some still stuff there about worth and what I'm doing. But now it just makes me feel like proud of this. I know this is going to sound esoteric, but like proud of this world. Like everybody has it in them to do such great things. And those great things don't have to be, I fed 1,000 homeless people, even though that's amazing. It doesn't have to be, I, changed this law and now so many people are free or what. Those are great things. But the idea that every single human can change a feeling, a belief, an interaction, the way they interact with people, with the world, with this earth, with their marriages, the way that they look and sound and feel for their children, little things like that are life changers, and they leave a different kind of legacy. I mean, one of my favorite things from clients, and I work with a lot of clients and they're working on stuff with their relationships or their life or their career or their whatever. But one of my favorite things is, well, there's two things. One is when someone finally finds their worth and it's not tied to anything that they do. That's one of my favorite things. My second favorite thing is when they come back after a session or two or three or whatever, and they tell me stories about how they're interacting with their children in a completely different way. That is, I believe, those things is why I keep going.
Do you have a specific favorite client story?
Oh, there's too many.
I know there's so many. There's so many.
Man, so I just told you the two things that like inspire me to keep going and to wanting to help and having that like faith in humanity in one sense, like, oh my goodness, everything's possible. I will say probably my favorite stories are stories of freedom. And I think, again, why does that resonate with me personally? Because it's my story of freedom, right? Of freeing myself from all of this stuff. But yeah, I've worked with numerous guys with serious pornography addiction that has, and I all but one or a couple of them have been just single guys, whatever, that have come to me, but a lot of them, most of them have been married. And to see the complete shift, because it's never about the coping skill. It's never about the drug of choice, right? It's about how it was wired in there. And they're always yearning for something. And what they're yearning for is connection, being wanted, and feeling free. And then all of a sudden they are. And those stories right there are some of the most. But I will tell you one of my favorite stories that I just thought of. One of my favorite stories is working with a woman who did chronic illness and came to me and, did a number of autoimmune things. And we did, I don't know, a couple of sessions together. And it was like, oh my goodness, I'm feeling so much better. Like, I feel like I have life again, and all this other stuff was great. And then came back and was, wanting to, had been told by doctors earlier, probably not going to be able to have kids, things like that. Then came back, I don't know, 6 months later maybe, and was like, hey, can we do a little bit more work on some things I'm feeling about this and that? Also, by the way, kind of wanting to get pregnant, but we're having a hard time. And the doctor said this, and I know we worked on things, but so we just did, I think maybe one touch-up session or something. I don't remember. And it was so good. She just was, everything is just, I feel free. I feel safe. I feel good. I feel capable. There's nothing blocking me anymore. We got rid of all that other stuff that was the blocks there. And I didn't hear from her for a while. It was great. But it was just great that there was freedom there. She came back and emailed me like, I don't know, 5 months later. And she's like, oh, I'm like 4 months pregnant or, whatever, something like that. And there's some anxiety and some different things coming up. Can we work through it? Absolutely. Like, so happy for you. This is incredible. So, worked through all the anxiety, all the fears, all the whatever, what's going to happen when the baby comes, and worked through all of that. She's feeling great. But I was just happy for her. I mean, that's a miracle story. Mm-hmm. And then something happened about a week and a half later where she got a hold of me a couple weeks later, and some complications had come up where she was bleeding, and she was told by a doctor, you're having a miscarriage. This is why, tearing of the placenta, all these different things. And she, got a hold of me and was just feeling a lot of things. And so I said, you know what, let's do a quick little touch up, just something little. And we did. And within a couple of days, she got back to me and she's like, oh my goodness, I'm actually still pregnant. Like, this is crazy. And
this is one of the craziest stories.
It was like back and forth and back and forth.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my goodness, this is incredible. So then we did like a follow-up, really, but the thing is that she had been doing the work on her own of like, who am I? What kind of body do I have? A protective, loving, nurturing, all these different things, as we were even planning for the future kids to come, and all of it. And she completely let go of any anxiety, fears, frustrations, self-doubt, anything like that. And continue to move forward. Obviously, the baby started getting healthier and healthier because of the work that she was doing. And then she had her baby, and it was just great. It's been great. I've been in touch with her over the last number of months, 6 months or so, and things are going well with her and her baby. But that's such an inspiring story, because what it is how powerful her body and her mind is. Like, not only did she create a good environment for a baby to even be conceived, that all the work that she had done, that when her body still was telling her, hey, you still got some stuff to work through, there's still some past traumas or issues, that when her body was speaking up, that she was able to tackle those and actually heal her body and save her child.
I'm not sure people are ready for that story yet. I'm like, that we know this stuff. We know the power. We've seen really just amazing, amazing things. That one is, even still, I'm like, we've got to get her on.
Yeah.
You got to do, because I know, I can see the emails coming in already. Like, really? No way. We need to just have people hear it from her. But yeah, that's Gosh, I remember you telling me that story. I was like, wait, we need to back up because I don't think I heard right. That's so incredible. And really does speak to the power of our mind and body.
Yeah.
And the great lie, which is that we're not powerful, we're not worthy, that what we do is going to dictate our abilities when the abilities are there. They've always been there. It's really just the unlayering and uncovering so that we can be as big and powerful as we were created to be.
Yeah. Well, as we're kind of closing this little section of it, I do want to say that this whole idea of, being broken or being messed up or whatever, and then this other idea that I had of like having to live a perfect life, I think it kind of comes full circle for me now, recognizing that a perfect life isn't accomplishing something or having a life look a certain way. But I mean, I feel like I have the perfect life now, but it's not that kind of perfect. It's like, it's a constant growth. Mm-hmm. It's a constant reframing. It's a constant adventure. Listen, you and me do not have everything perfectly together.
Wait, what?
And, I was with a client a couple, last week or whatever, and he's young. He's like 19 or 20. And he was telling me, he's like, man, your kids, they're like teenagers. They must be so lucky to have parents like you that like help them through this stuff right now. And I was like, yeah, we have some damage control to do, like, because we didn't always do this. Wait, can you please
tell them that?
we because this is still, we're on our own journeys. We're figuring this stuff out. And, they were born into a marriage and into a family that still had a lot of coping issues and problems. And that's, how they were raised. But we're doing something different now. And
right.
For me, we're holding the space for that. And I think that that's the life that I'm trying to create, is a space for space to make mistakes, but mistakes are opportunities to learn. Mm-hmm. They're not problems. They're not failures. They're not issues. They're actually just feedback and to tell us, man, what can I do even better next time? How can I hold this space even broader for you, for them, for others? So anyways, it's a life of adventure and growth and learning, and that's the perfect life. The life of continual growth, the life of leveling up, the life of just continuing on this journey of healing.
And the control and the freedom is inside.
Yeah.
So no matter what's happening on the outside, we get to choose our way of dealing with it, seeing it, perceiving it, and being with it.
Yeah. I mean, this pandemic has been crazy for most people, right? I mean, it's been a lot of, and people have changed jobs, and obviously, us going full into this without any other thing, but it was the time for me to be able to take the time to do even more inner work, even more self-reflection, even more, what are we doing and why, with marriage, with family, with our kids, with life, right? And so, I mean, we need that quietness. Mm-hmm. And of course, I've been up here in my head for so many years, so many decades of my life, that it's so good to just sit into the seat of the body and the heart.
Well, my co-host, Kent, this is great. I knew this was going to be great. And I know we'll be on again. You'll be on again. You'll continue. I mean, you're here all the time to to help out with these.
I'll step behind or in front of the camera.
Yeah, you'll step back in front of the camera once in a while and let us in on more of the journey and everything. But thank you. Thank you for partnering with me in this. You didn't have to, and you did. And it has been quite a ride. And it's been really cool to watch you step into you. It's been neat to meet you, and then this you at each level, at each stage, and to continue to choose, right? Like, we've been different people, really different people throughout this process, and hey, we're still choosing each other.
We'll have to do a whole podcast on choosing your spouse.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Okay. We'll talk again soon.